Welcome to Raja Against the Machine. I'm Masood Raja, and in this video I will briefly talk about the reactionary entrenchment in American politics, both on the right and on the left in this pandemic. And what do I mean by it? Now, when a crisis of this magnitude emerges, right, and starts impacting people's life, how nations react to it and respond to it in a way defines their future. So right now, millions of Americans are affected by this pandemic. Over 150,000 have died, right? Now that should be enough to jolt the leadership to think and respond to it. Now when we look at Mr. Trump and his, bunch of liars around him, all they are enacting is a sort of reentrenchment. There is no thought in their minds, in Trump's mind or in his advisor's mind, that maybe there is something wrong with the way American system is structured, and maybe they could use this time to rethink it. Rethink, the healthcare system, rethink the educational system, rethink how people get paid, how they make a living. All of these things need to be rethought. All they are trying to do in one way or the other is to make sure that the system that they have remains stable and remains in place. And what is that system? A healthcare system that depends on, by and large, on employer healthcare system, right? So why do people feel so terrible about it? If there are no jobs, right, you also lose your health insurance, right? Then even if you have a job and you have health insurance, half of the time people are afraid to go to work, because even if you have health insurance and you get sick or you get admitted in the hospital, you could still be bankrupted, right? So what was needed was not to throw money at us or to tell us, we're going to do this stimulus. What was needed was, here is what we're going to do for emergency, but let us rethink this healthcare system and see how can we structure it better so that it's more responsive to people. I mean, that's not rocket science. Every developed nation on this planet, other than the United States, has one or the other kind of socialized medical care. And no matter how people deride it and talk ill of it, at the end of the day, it might get overextended, but it works, right? But there is no such thought, of course, on the right, from Ted Cruz to all the other, like these lieutenants of capital, there is no. But even on the left, look at what we liberals or democrats and our leaders are. They are still legislating to apply bandaids within the same system. So, okay, here, let's give some money to the insurers. Let's give some money to the employers so that it trickles down. There is no revolutionary thought which says a thing of this magnitude has happened. It has impacted people's lives. It has changed the world, right? So do we need to plan something or come up with a system that is more responsive to that, in which people feel secure, they feel less precarious, right? And they feel like they have some system within which they can survive, right? And that is the problem of limited thought, both on the right and the left, that what they assume is that the current system is okay, right? And all we need to do is tweak it a little, whereas what America needs is a radical restructuring of life. Restructuring in a sense of learning, we as citizens and people, as to how to live our lives more responsibly. But for the government, may it be Mr. Trump or someone else, to think that not everything can be delivered through privatized enterprises. That at the end of the day, there are certain basic things in a modern nation states that the government must provide. Healthcare is one of them. Free education is another, right? Taking care of people who are elderly, who are poor, who are infirm, should be part of that project. And it's not something new. It's not rocket science. The last time America faced a crisis of this magnitude wasn't a health crisis, but it was the Great Depression, right? Why did America change after that? Because there was leadership. There was FDR and all the others, right, who looked at what was happening, looked at the bread lines, looked at the people starving, and they said, we need to come up with something so that in the future, if something like this happens, people don't starve. People have something to fall back on, right? So the New Deal came to be, right? That's where we got our Social Security. That's where we got our Medicare, right? These are the things that instead of strengthening them right in the middle of the pandemic, right, the Republicans and Mr. Trump are trying to dismantle them. So what I mean by this reentrenchment is that both political parties are thinking within the structure of whatever they consider as permissible politics. And other than people on the left, like people like Bernie Sanders and others, right, and Elizabeth Warren, who are not necessarily welcome in the heart of the party, right? Other than those who are thinking of long-term structuralist measures, right, to change the structure of American economy, right? Now, I was reading an article, and it's absolutely clear that all these things already exist in America. This is a corrupt political system. I mean, this is a system in which if I have $1 billion, I can actually buy congressmen, with no limit to what I can contribute to them, right? Where people can own politicians, where lobbyists can actually go and lobby for whatever interest they have, and the lawmakers accept their money and then go and do their bidding. It's not necessarily, a perfect system. It's a very deeply corrupt system. So there is no thought going on as to how to make the system better. Of course, we can't expect it from Mr. Trump. I mean, he's a deeply corrupt human being. He's a deeply corrupt leader. He has surrounded himself with the most incompetent and corrupt people, and that's a fact. There is no doubt about it, right? But we can at least expect from those who speak on our behalf and in our name, and at least as people, we can raise our voices and say, you can do better than this. We can do better than this. I mean, this nation can land, a rover on Mars with a 4-pound helicopter, right? They're capable of that. They can go to the moon, right? We can build fighting aircraft that cost $35 million per plane, right? But we can't come up with a viable healthcare system for the elderly and for every citizen. We cannot come up with free education for our brilliant young people. We cannot provide food to children in our schools because somehow, if we go by the conservative standards, that spoils us. Right when we are spoiling the biggest corporations in the world, we're throwing money at them. We're giving contracts to people who are not even delivering the goods that they promised, right? So it's that reentrenchment. So what will save us is not Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is a symptom of the corruption that exists in the system. Even if he wins this election, right, and comes back, he's got 4 more years and then he'll be gone. Right, forgotten in history or maybe remembered as a terrible president. But he is the symptom of the malaise, which is the American politics, which is deeply corrupt to the core, right? The only problem is that those corruptions have been regularized, have been legalized, right? So, while we fight through this pandemic, mostly feeling alone, sometimes feeling isolated, while we as human beings are, taking care of each other, helping each other, and terrified of getting sick, but even more terrified of getting sick and going to a hospital, even if we have health insurance, right? While we feel like that, we as people need to start asking these people who claim to be our leaders on both sides of the political aisle these hard questions. Why cannot you come up with a viable healthcare system? Why cannot you come up with an educational system that makes education accessible to more people and doesn't make it connected to their ability to pay? And most importantly, for our children in the K-12 system, why cannot you, as the richest nation on the planet and which keeps boasting about how powerful it is, provide the children in your school system the best healthcare, the best food, the best textbooks? These are the questions that we need to start asking in this pandemic instead of asking for the little scraps that they are throwing at us. So let's talk about these things. Let's bring them up. Let's hear our corporatized media talk about it, right? CNN and others, they every single day they are Trump, 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 but no one is asking the hard questions. And maybe you, me, and everyone else here in whatever medium we have, we should start asking these hard questions while we are working in solidarity with each other and trying to get through this. That's all I have. Thank you for listening to my rant. I hope there was something useful in it for you. Please let me know what you think. And as always, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And take care of yourselves. Peace and love.